I'll call to order the Committee of the Whole for November 20th. Time is 7:13 p.m. Pat, if you take a roll call, please.
Clark? Here. Hendrickson? Here. Millar?
Here.
Reed?
Here.
Tylen?
Here.
Tome?
Here.
Traxler?
Here.
All present.
All right, this meeting was noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances. First thing I have tonight is to approve the agenda. Unless there's any alterations or questions, entertain a motion on the agenda.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, got a motion and a second. All in favor to approve the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Next up, citizen comments on agenda items. Was anybody signed up for this meeting? No? All right. All right, next up, number 5, department reports. Written reports only. We had a DPW Quarterly and Monthly report. We had a police report for October of 2018, Fire Department for October of 2018, Senior Center for September of 2018, Treasurer's report for October of 2018, and Lifestar report for October of 2018. Any questions on the department reports? All right, next up, number 6, boards, committees, and commission reports. We have the Eastern Columbia County Joint Municipal Court from September 20th, the HLPC meeting from October 11th, Senior Center from October 4th, and Columbus Water and Light from October 11th. Any questions on the boards, committees, and commission reports? Seeing none. Next up, number 7, review and discuss request by Attorney Al Stroshine to assist with a donation to Columbus Fall River Food Pantry. I don't know who's going to, Patrick, you're going to lead that off, or Al?
I can start.
Al's going to come up and.
Yeah, Al had contacted me with I guess a fairly unique situation to allow the city to assist with a donation, a charitable donation. So I guess I'll just let Al come up and describe it for us.
Thank you.
Again, I'm Al Stroshine, 620 Park Avenue, Columbus, local attorney. I'm not sure if what I sent to Pat was in the packet to the council folks. So, I'm working with the Russ and Peggy Frederick Charitable Remainder Trust, and a portion of that trust is earmarked for the Columbus Area Food Pantry. You have to be very careful with a charitable remainder trust. You have to have that money go to direct to a charitable 501c3, or you have to go through the city, earmark it through the city, and then have it in a Chinese walled account for the food pantry. And so I contacted Patrick, and both of us thought that it would be wise for me to come to the council tonight and explain this. I think the community will be pleasantly surprised, pleased, and possibly even shocked with what the Fredericks are doing with their funds in their charitable remainder trust between now and the end of the year. We hope to make some significant distributions not only to the food pantry but to other entities in the community. So if there are any questions concerning this, I'll try to address them.
I had one question. When you say it's going to be distributed to the Columbus, Wisconsin, or Columbus area food pantry, is there one particular pantry that we're referring to? Well, because I only know Crossroads and
Russ, especially Peggy Frederick, actually got the food pantry started that is housed in the senior center, and that is where the family would like it to go. That food pantry, I talked to Colleen Waterworth, who is the executive director or chair of the board of that food pantry, and she indicated that no, we are not a 501c3 entity. I had thought when I initially contacted them that they were affiliated with Olivet Church, because Russ and Peggy Frederick are very active with the Olivet Congregational Church. They are not specifically affiliated with a church. They are an entity that is using space in the city's building. So the idea that the family has a good question, very good question, but the idea is that it would go to the Columbus Food Pantry administered by Colleen Waterworth. and others, not just Colleen, but she's a chair of the board.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Al, Mike?
I guess just for further clarification, this is obviously a significant contribution to the food pantry. Is there a nonprofit structure that the food pantry has if there's a board of directors? Is it just not a 501c3 designation? Do you know?
I've not been affiliated. I haven't asked for their organizational structure once I got to the fact that they are not that charitable entry. I mean, Rolf Frederick, the oldest son of Russ and Peg Frederick, is the trustee of the Charitable Remainder Trust and can make a decision as to whether or not it goes. But I know that the family feels very strongly, because Peggy Frederick was very strong with respect to the food pantry when it was started a number of years ago, quite a number of years ago, that something be designated to go to the food pantry,
Okay, thank you.
and that particular food pantry.
All right. So what do you need from us? Just move this forward if there's consensus?
Yeah, that's what we're looking for. It's, outside of the normal operations of a city, but, it's a do-good type of action here, and thought that at least should be brought to the council for awareness and consideration.
So just to clarify, so I assume this Kim or whoever can work with setting up whatever designation needs to be set up to keep it in line with the rules that you need to follow.
Well, yes, I'm hoping that Colleen and her board will follow whatever direction needs to be. It'd be nice if they'd form a 501c3 organization, but from talking to Colleen, time constraints, other things, it's not necessarily easy to set it up, although I know the Columbus Historical Society got one going here a couple of years ago, and it didn't seem like it took that long to do that. So they may need a little bit of a boost, but I just want to make sure that this is earmarked specifically for the food pantry, and it doesn't go to improve Lewis Street.
And I think we've done that before with donations, and just to make it, when it comes before the council, the language very clear. I don't foresee there would be a problem with that on our end.
Attorney Johnson, do you see any issues the way this is being proposed?
No, as long as the city can keep the funds segregated and then figure out a way to shift the funds to the food pantry when needed, I think that's the extent of the issue.
Okay, and we'll need Kim to work out those details then?
Actually, Andy, I did mention this to Kim before, and she said from more than once, but not very often, people do make donations intended for the food pantry, thinking the city's affiliated. And so it's written to the city, but she's able to work it so it gets to the right place. So this is similar to that, I believe.
Long term, I'm going to strongly encourage the food pantry to become a 501c3 entity, though, especially given this is a significant gift, as Mayor Tolman mentioned. So,
Yeah. Okay. Do we have consensus to move this forward? All right. Thank you, Al.
thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, all.
Thank you. All right, next up, I have number 8, review and discuss the following service contracts for 2019 and 2020: electrical, plumbing, HVAC, Hillside, cemetery-mowing, Hillside, cemetery-internment, tree care, weeds and grass scrubbery. It's been a long day
Andy, I have to recuse myself at this point.
for all of the items.
I believe at least 2 at the end I do. So,
Okay,
do you want me to wait until those
it's-
specific
that's up to you.
ones?
You can, I mean, if you want to be a part of the conversation for the ones that you don't need to recuse yourself for, then you can stick around for those. Otherwise, you can, it's up to you.
I think it might be cleaner if I just,
All right.
okay.
All right. Thank you, Kasha. All right, so in your packet, we have several different bids for several services for the city. The first up, we have the contract for municipal HVAC services. Looks like we received 2 bids on this. The recommendation from staff is to go with TAS Heating and Cooling at a standard rate of $70 an hour and $100 for off hours, and a 15% markup for parts and supplies. And
Compared to the other bid that we received, I think that's very easy to
yeah,
accept that recommendation.
yeah. So the other bid was from another company, $130 an hour, and the off hours were a lot higher too. So, any discussion on the HVAC services? All right, I'm seeing none. We'll go ahead and.
Andy?
Yes, sir.
One point, and you'll notice on the information that's on the bottom of the summary sheet for this bid and for the next one, there is a requirement that the bid submitted be notarized, and there are a couple that came in that you're about to move forward that aren't notarized. To me, that's not a fatal issue, but it's something that at least should be brought to your attention, and then when the motion is made at the council level, you'll want to waive that requirement. And if it's an important issue to some of you, then you can talk about it now. But it's not, it's a form over substance issue, but it is part of your process in submitting the bid.
Okay. Thank you, Attorney Johnson. Does anybody have any issues with that? We can discuss now. Otherwise, we'll go ahead, Karina.
Oh, would it be a problem to contact the company for them to resubmit the exact same bid with notarization?
The problem with doing that is that basically if you're going to if you wanted to do that, you certainly can, but then you should reject all the bids and reopen the whole process and start all over again, because you're asking somebody to change the bid that they made originally. So, yeah, this is, again, it's a form over substance issue, but it is trying to follow your requirement. And if you're going to allow somebody to change a term in their bid, you should then reject all the bids and start the process over again, which you can certainly do, but it will, move you back in time a little bit.
With that information, are you comfortable waiving the requirement, or did you want to? Okay. Everyone else good with that? Okay. Mike, you got something? No? All right. All right, we can move that one forward to the next regular meeting. Excuse me. Next up, we have, what is this? Award of contract for municipal electrical service. On this one, looks like we received 3 bids. The recommendation from staff is to award the contract for electrical services to the lowest responsible bidder of SNS Electric for year 2019 and 2020. $65 an hour standard rate, $97.50 for off hours, and a 20% markup on supplies. The other, you can see the other rates are 90 and 69 an hour. Comparable, as far as, one of those is pretty competitive. But staff has recommended SNS, so if you have any questions or concerns, this would be the time to talk about it. Otherwise, we can move that one forward. All right. Sounds good. Oh, yeah, same. Trina, you still good? Okay. All right, so I don't have, I mean, there's no motion on this tonight to waive this. This is to next time.
Right. This is an issue that should be discussed tonight if it's a
Yeah.
concern for you, and then when the council takes formal action at its next meeting on these, it'll be a two-step process for these first two. I think the rest of them were okay, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Before we move on, I guess, could I get a better understanding of why that happened with those two bids? If it's a logistical issue when we go through the RFP process, I'm just not sure of why that happens, or what the need for the notarization is, if that's been policy that the city's had, or if we've discussed that on the staff level at all.
I think it just, it's what we do in all of our contracts, and it adds an extra step for a firm to add legitimacy to their bid. That's why that piece is added. One thing I'll note is in the bid documents, there is a stipulation that says the city does have the right to reject any, all bids for any reason, or any, I don't know the exact language, but that's where I think Attorney Johnson has the comfort level there to say that we can follow this process, and it's stated right off the bat in the bid materials.
Okay.
All right. Any, are you guys comfortable moving that one forward to the next regular meeting? All right. Next up, I have municipal plumbing services. We have only one bid from Wright Plumbing for, oh, sorry, is that two? Oh, sorry, we have two bids. My apologies. One bid, the staff recommendation for plumbing services is Wright Plumbing, and the rate of $88 an hour for standard labor, $132 for off hours, with a 25% markup on parts and supplies. The other bidder had an hourly rate of $112, $135 for off hours, and a 10% markup on parts and supplies. Any questions or concerns about Wright Plumbing? Comfortable with that one? All right. That isn't. All right. Next, I have Hillside Cemetery-internment services. We have one bid on this from Meitner Land Service. I don't know how internment services work. Is it standard to only get one bid, or is this a pretty narrow field in the area? It's true.
I think it's just that there's limited, a limited market out there and providers. As to the low response, that would be a speculation, but I don't think there's too many companies out there or local that do that.
Who does it now?
Meitner, right?
Meitner does.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mary Jo.
Since we did only have one bid, are these submitted bids in line with current prices that or the last contract? I mean, was there much of a deviation or change from the last contract, Carolyn?
The city itself has been working with Wayne Meitner for quite a few years. Again, I don't think there's a lot of contractors out there that do this service. Wayne typically might, for it, now that they're 2-year contracts, I think he raised the rates like $20 per burial type of thing. And these costs are not incurred by the city at all. You know, we have to have a contract with them to make sure that these services are provided for our Hillside Cemetery, but those are taken care of through the funeral homes or other arrangements. So, you know, there really is no cost to the city itself. they're passed on to, the families through the funeral homes and such. But yeah, Wayne has a great working relationship with cemetery secretary and funeral homes and such, so.
Thank you.
This is probably more of a question for Patrick. With our bids that we get, I've noticed that they're all 2-year contracts, but some of our other services are 3, 4, and 5 years. Is there a reason that these particular bids are only 2 years? Are these contracts only for 2 years?
Are they, again, I don't know for certain, but I think because they're tied to Hillside, they talk, the Hillside as a separate board, that maybe that's their preference.
Are you talking about these contracts in general?
Yeah.
I know when Davis and I first started, they were 1-year contracts. And, for the city to spend the money to go out and, for sealed bids and it's a long process, and, here at council as well. So Davis and I were the ones who kind of suggested, can we do at least 2-year contracts? So, I mean, that's what we've stuck with. I think this would be the 6th year, where we had 2-year contracts. So, I mean, if the council or anybody's interested in doing, 3-year contracts, I'm.
Yeah, it was a thought I had. I just I didn't know if there was a particular reason that we only do this, or if it's just kind of how we've been doing it, and that's how we're, it's just,
I do know, trying to go out for bids and sealed bids and stuff, it does, it's a competition out there a bit. It keeps everybody honest on pricing and,
right.
That kind of thing. So it makes it easier for us at budget time.
Right. Okay. Any other questions on the internment services for Hillside? All right. Seeing none, everyone's comfortable moving that forward? All right. Thank you. Let's see. Next up, I have Hillside Cemetery-mowing contract. We have recommendation from staff of from the ground up lawn care for 2019-2020 at a rate of $2,000 per mowing and $2,100, and then next year it'd be $2,100 per mowing. It looks like this one only had one bid, which seems a little unusual. There's only one bid for mowing, but okay. Is there any discussion on this? Jason?
Who does this now?
It's John Coughlin's group. I can't think of the name of his business.
Who does it now, and how much are they right now?
Currently, it is Signature Lawn
Signature.
Care, and for this year, on their contract, it's about $1,600 per mowing or per event. John came in and picked up the documents and then called and said he talked to his staff and they were not interested in doing a bid with the city of, just didn't feel he had I don't know if it was the staffing or the time to commit to it. Dwayne's Lawn Care was also quite interested. They also backed out because he didn't want to commit to something when not knowing that he could commit at next spring and through the summer to have a full staff to be able to take care of that. So I'm finding that's kind of a problem with some of the contractors, is actually finding employees to commit to some of these services. That's unfortunate, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts? Mayor Tolman?
Given the circumstances on this one with only one bid coming back and that it's for lawn mowing services, I feel that we should go back out to bid on this. We've got 5 months. I think that's what we should do. Obviously, we have someone who's abstained from the conversation here, but I think just as far as the public's perception, we want to make sure that we've exhausted all resources to at least get a competitive bid in here. So I would ask that we consider putting that back out for bid, since we've got quite a bit of time to do that.
Carolyn, maybe you can speak to the question. if the issue with some of the other potential bidders was commitment, in this case, would it be helpful to back down to a 1-year contract?
That's a possibility.
So I guess I would urge, if we're going to reopen it, let's maybe try that. And since the feedback is that some of the smaller, more local contractors are considering, they don't know what will happen that far in the future, I think that's reasonable if we would offer a 1-year contract.
I would agree with that.
Is it possible to go through this bidding process and have some options in there, Paul? You know, you have to ask everybody for a 1-year bid, or could you have the option of them offering a 2-year bid if they wish to do so? Or-
You could actually ask them to bid it both ways or pick a way. It's kind of like with your public works contracts when you have options A, or option B, option C. If it just depends on how you want to word it. So if you ask them for a 1-year bid, and then you could look at that and then ask them for a separate 2-year bid, and some are going to say yes and some will say no. So then you'll be back to which way you want to go. But yeah, if you word it correctly, you can do it. You can do it both ways.
I think offering as much flexibility as we can would be a good step.
Agreed.
So my only question on that then is, we have the same situation with the non-compliance weed, grass, and shrubbery cutting service. Are you is the council looking to do the same thing in that, with that? I mean, there's one bidder, it's the same bidder, it's the same type of service, just not the cemetery? Or, like, I'm just looking for some guidance. That'd be, it's towards the end, I think it might even be the last one, maybe. No, yeah, it's the last one in there.
So are you noticing the same problem, getting multiple bids on that type of work?
That is actually a new contract for this year. Previously, we did not have a contract. We just had a contractor that we hired for those services, and what we were finding is really a big lead time on when they actually took care of those lawns or shrubbery or that type of thing. They were, by the time they got the list of who they needed to take care of, and the city would hire them to do so, those properties were already not in compliance with the ordinance. And sometimes I'm still waiting for a bill from her this year, person that we hired, from August. So it's really uncomfortable to have to send a bill out, in November for something that was done in August. So we wanted to kind of have a contract where we would have a little more control on the time frame and commitment. But I think maybe doing a 1-year contract with something like that as well might be a better option to try and get a few more bids.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm hearing that you want to go back out to bid for both of those?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, 1 second. Okay. Okay, so next up I have municipal street and park tree care, tree care services. Again, this is, I have one bid, K&B Tree and Lawn Care. I feel like I'm just beating on the same drum here, but is it just one bid for tree service? I know there's at least 2 in town. I'm just surprised that we would only get one bid. Do you think, is that typical, Carolyn, to get one bid for these as well? 1 or 2. Okay. You guys have any comments on it? Go ahead.
I guess on the lawn mowing issue, I know we've got a lot of time in that, Carolyn, but do we have a lot of activity with this contractor in the winter months for tree issues, or is that normally done more in the summer? I know we've got the ash trees we're removing. I'm just not sure what work these contractors do exclusively and what we do in-house.
It's pretty much all year round, but they're also, part of the contract is if we had an emergency like we did in 2015, you know, the city becomes their priority as well to take care of. You know, so that's always nice to have them as a backup, you know, and their staff as well.
Is this the current provider?
It is not. They did not get their bid in on time, so
Only
it could
thing
not
that-
be considered.
The only thing that concerns me about what she was saying, year round, you could have an ice storm tomorrow and trees down everywhere, and
Yeah.
no one did. Well, I guess the contract goes through the end of the year, the current one, but I would be worried about that. I think it would be important if you did want to. Sounds like you got another bid, but it was too late. If you did want to consider going out to bid again, we'd want to get that shirt up by January 1 and approved. So I'm open to discussion on that.
Carolyn, what are the current rates? Are they in the ballpark of this bid?
In the ballpark, I believe they were slightly lower,
Okay.
but pretty close.
Mayor Tom?
Question more for Attorney Johnson, I guess. I know I'm trying to figure out is when we award these contracts, I guess I always thought the intent was to have a preferred contractor that can give us better service than just opening up the phone book. When we have a contractor sign one of these, does that prevent the city from calling another contractor in the event of an emergency and we need to have additional support or help, or someone's not able to respond in the normal fashion per contract and we call a different plumber or electrician? Is that forbidden, or is this just putting us into a position of priority through the contract?
I would say it's the latter.
Okay.
This is your first call.
Okay.
And if you need an army of arborists for an ice storm or something like that, you have the right. It's not, nowhere in the language does it say exclusive contract.
That's what I had assumed.
Right. But it is your priority call.
Sure. Okay. That gives me a little bit more comfort, I guess, knowing that we need to have someone that can take care of things, but we could also call someone else if the need arises for the tree trimming or tree care service. I know that ICK&B in town a lot, and we've worked with them through DPW.
They were our previous, aside from this last year, they were, for many years, our tree contracting service.
All right. I'm open. I'd like to hear what everyone else would like us to do with this one. I feel like this is kind of a niche one too.
I guess I'm not hearing that there are the same issues. I feel like if the bids are in the ballpark of the current contract, I'd be comfortable moving this forward even though we have one bid.
Jason?
I'm still thinking I would like the second bid, even though it was turned in late. We know we can get it if we open it back up. I mean, they're ready for it. They were just late. I don't want it to seem like, oh, we're opening it up just for that, but open it up for everybody, and we may end up getting 3 bids, or even make it a year like we did the other ones too.
Remember your timeline for this, because if you're going to go that path, which you certainly can, you'll be rejecting all bids for this particular issue on December 4. It then requires a Class 2 notice to start the process over again. And that will then be a period of time for people to resubmit their bids. That will then be 2 meetings through Committee of the Whole and Council. That will put you probably in the middle of your second meeting in January before you'll have that finalized, which, you know, is not fatal to your situation, but it's an issue to think about.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. I will point out that we're probably going to have other meetings, you know, in between now and the end of the year. Maybe. So I don't know. I'm kind of in line with what Jason is saying there. Trina?
Oh, I guess I'm more with Reagan on this one, that since they had been a provider for several years and the prices seem comparable, I'm okay with keeping them.
I'm comfortable with moving it forward
Okay.
as it is.
All right, well, there's more of those than mine, so we can move that forward. Thank you, Carolyn.
Welcome.
All right. So I think, unless I missed something, that would conclude the contracts. Okay. We'll move on to number 9. Kasha, you're welcome back up here. All right, welcome back. Number 9, review Class A liquor and fermented malt beverage license application for Mowers Market IGA. There's information in the packet about this. As you've heard, the hometown market is sold to Maurer Foods Columbus LLC. With that, will need to be a change in the liquor license. There is an application that Pat provided us. I've lost it though. I can find it. Thank you. Oh, hey, look, thank you guys. So yeah, it's this is something that we have asked for in the past when we're going through new applications. Pat, you're good with everything that was turned in? Okay. Looks like they've. I had an update somewhere. Gosh darn it. Oh, here it is. All right. So all inspections have been done and approved by the building inspector and fire chief. Finance director Manley reported there were no issues with taxes. Water and Light reported that utilities are current. All background checks checked out by the police department. And if you have any questions, that would be the time. Otherwise, we can move this forward. Mayor Tone?
I would just ask Attorney Johnson, do you have an application in front of you?
I do not.
Okay, number 9, the premises description. I've just kind of been focused on that the last couple of years, and I just wanted to make sure that that was satisfactory. I believe it says sold at front of store and stored in a locked room adjacent.
Right, it would be, in a perfect world, it would be nice to like divide that up into the northwest quarter of the store or something like that to give it a little bit more definition. And the same with the storage area, just so that you know where those things are. Front of store defines it. I don't know if it's the whole front of the store or if it's just one part of the front, but a little more definition is better than less in this situation. And if it's able to be touched up a little and given a little bit better definition before your next meeting, that would be perfectly fine.
I agree.
Yeah, I was. When you say sold at front of store, it doesn't say inside the store. I mean, obviously that's where it is. We've all been there, so. So we could move this forward with asking the applicant to make those small edits and bring it up for approval at the next meeting.
Right.
Is everybody okay with that? Okay. All right, we'll move that forward to the next meeting and look forward to seeing those small edits on the application. All right. Next up. Sorry. Sirens got my brain confused for a second. Review and discuss final closeout change order for the 2018 City Street project. There was information in our packet on this. I didn't get a header page that asked for giving a description other than what you can see here in the letter. The bottom line is this is the final change order, and it's a decrease in the of $2,412.64. are some invoices attached for your viewing.
Andy,
Yes, Patrick.
if I could?
You may.
Jason was not able to make it, but I did speak with him. I spoke with Ben today, too, his assistant, about this, and thought I would share the reason for the decrease. So, if you recall, originally we had that change order that put the contract price up because of the additional water main work on East School Street by DPW. Now the reduction comes after the final calculations of the subgrade material in the original design and estimate of the project. Jason had, estimated a certain amount of material needed for the sub base, and it turned out that there wasn't that much that was needed, so resulting in a lower cost, and that's reflected in this final change order.
All right. Thanks, Patrick.
Yep.
All right. Any further discussion on this item? Questions for Patrick? All right.
I have one.
Mayor Tom?
Sorry, I left my line.
Okay.
in. Does that mean then, when this comes forward, that this will be the final payment to the contractor for the project, or are there still further invoices outside of this? Do you know?
I think this is all wrapping in the final.
Okay.
So if this is approved, then we will get then a final invoice to take care of everything.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. All right, we'll move that forward then. Next up, I have number 11, consider and discuss resolution to accept donated utilities from Family Foods. When they built Hall Road, prior to the construction of Hall Road, From approached us to request that they're allowed to construct a portion of the water and sewer main off of the city's new utility lines adjacent to Highway 16. And in that agreement, in the what was it, the development agreement?
Yes.
Patrick, why don't you take this one?
Sure.
You're
So in working
More
out,
first.
we're working with From on their expansion and our plans for the utilities that were put in last year and Hall Road construction this year. From recognized the need to have the mains brought in into Hall Road before the road was put in. So the agreement was that they would do that work themselves, and then it would provide them with a better connection to their building. And then once it was done, then they would donate it back to the city. Being water mains, we want those in the city. So that is the request that has been forwarded and before you tonight.
I was going to get there.
Okay. No doubt about that.
Thanks, Patrick. All right, so the resolution 2218 is in the packet for review. If there are any questions, let me know. Otherwise, move this one forward as well.
Yeah, if that was part of the developer's agreement and Jason's got everything cleared, I'd say we move it forward to the next regular meeting for approval.
All right. All right, next up, number 12, discuss transfer of jurisdictional rights, portion of State Highway 73. Patrick, you want to take that one too?
I can. So back in the planning and discussion with the DOT about the work on Highway 73, Park Avenue, the understanding was that they could repair and repave that stretch for the city, and the resulting action would be then the city would receive the jurisdictional rights to that stretch, and this resolution formalizes that. What jurisdictional rights means that the city then assumes snow plowing and those kind of maintenance things, which we're prepared for, but we also have access control. So if along that stretch, if there's a development or something that wants to access 73, we have better control over allowing that, whereas we would have had to defer to DOT to do that. So there are advantages with that. And in the end, we got a pretty decent stretch of road redone at minimal cost to the city.
Thank you, Patrick. Questions? Hey, Tom.
In the agreement, which I am assuming came from the DOT, Patrick, the date of October 16th, 2018 is in there. I'm assuming technically it's already ours. We're going to be plowing snow on it, but we just need to accept this agreement officially. So the DOT is waiting on us in effect?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Okay.
And I think if there are a couple of dates that need to be adjusted, those can be before we take it to the regular meeting too, just to make sure that they're correct.
I don't want to mess anything up for the DOT. It might take another 6 months or a year to redraft a copy. I'm just wanted clarification on
Yeah,
it.
understood.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Tom. All right, we'll move that one forward as well. Next up, discuss the placement of stop signs at John Street and Hamilton and Center Street and Hamilton. Well, that reads weird. Signs at John Street and Hamilton, Center Street and Hamilton. Oh, okay, gotcha. All right. So this came from citizen comments. A citizen came in and spoke of the safety of pedestrians in pedestrian safety in his neighborhood, students walking to school, etc. Staff did a review, and it was recommended the stop signs be placed on John Street and Center Street at Hamilton. So right now it's unsignified? Uncontrolled? Yes, thank you. It's unsigned. There's a map of where these would be placed in your packet. Yeah, so you got one on right at the corner of Hamilton. Yep, and John and Hamilton and Center. And the stops, yeah. So it leaves traffic flowing on Hamilton Street. Any concerns about this? Regan?
I just want to say I hate uncontrolled intersections in a city, especially if there's pedestrian traffic. So I think this is a great idea, and think we should move it forward.
Actually, just a reminder then, in the code, it says Board of Public Works. So the cow is the Board of Public Works, so the end would stop here if there's, yep,
Do we need to vote then?
Yeah.
Okay.
yep.
I would love to vote on this tonight then.
Yeah, I would as well. I think that Regan brings up a good point. I think there should be very few uncontrolled intersections in town, and something maybe we should take a deeper look at some point here in the future. Kasha.
I concur. Living in this neighborhood, I know these routes are exactly where the kids are going to and from school, and there are a lot of kids in that area and an entire new development that has been built behind it. So there's a lot of foot traffic, especially to the school. So I absolutely would like to vote on this.
Okay, Mayor Tom.
I'll make a motion that the Board of Public Works approves 2 additional stop signs to be placed at the intersection of Hamilton and Center Street and John Street.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is voice vote okay on this one? Yep. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Seeing none? All right. We can put up stop signs. Thank you, guys. Next up, review and discuss condition of the pillars at Fireman's Park Pavilion. Information in your packet about this. I assume Patrick is going to give us an update on this. There are pictures as well. I went down and took a look at it as well, and it does look to be a little concerning. So, Patrick, do you want to?
Right, at this point, the conditions were brought to the attention of our building inspector. And the recommendation at this point was just to control the activity on the balcony and underneath, and we've put up some barricades, but we feel that maybe a deeper review of the situation is in order. So I brought it to the council for that discussion and awareness that I think we'll need to have someone come in and have a more in-depth look at that and see what the needs might be. That's really, simply put, that's what it is.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely, so they would be locking those doors where people couldn't go out on the balcony?
There's, yeah, we've put up some barricades for now, but actually we're looking into something that's a little bit more, I think more clear and useful for a little bit longer term. We don't know what the term will be, but rather than just DPW barricades, there'll be a nicer barrier there.
Is the entire balcony structurally unsound, or
It's-
just the corner,
Just
the back side, like the whatever side that is?
right around the south, it'd be the south end of the pavilion. The other side is okay. The interior is fine. But just we were advised to have a closer look at the balcony area.
Okay. And that was by the building inspector?
Yeah.
He didn't have any recommendation?
I haven't gone to that step. I'm looking into our options in terms of who to come and look, being a historic building, and we've kind of been in this situation with other things before, so I wanted to
Okay.
ensure that we go down the right path with this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sorry.
just based on the pictures, I think it's prudent, could potentially be a public safety issue, and I think it makes sense to spend the money to have it looked at and just ensure that the overall structure is sound and what needs to be done to fix it.
Yeah, I agree. Mike?
I support doing something as soon as possible as well, especially if the balcony is closed, and it doesn't show it in this picture, but I'm assuming that this post is actually supporting the roof as well. So, I mean, it's winter. The snow load on the roof could be an issue.
Yeah.
So I guess there's probably a lot of things to consider when someone looks at this, because this could be a problem in other posts that haven't been identified structurally. I'm not sure what caused this. But I'm a little bit concerned about having someone that, a structural engineer that wants to come in and reassess the entire building. We need to address this problem as soon as possible. But I also think you need to look at the bigger picture of as well, as that if something has shifted or moved structurally, that needs to be dealt with when this repair happens. So I don't know if you had anybody in mind as far as who you're going to call and initiate this prescription to fix this quickly. I know we have contracts with city services, et cetera, but I don't know if this is something exclusive because of the historic nature of the building, et cetera. Someone could certainly fix this with a steel post, but that's probably not what we want there. It's not going to look right, so.
Right, that's an extra consideration in this.
Yeah. Are there any other unexpended funds anywhere within, like the pavilion budget or anything that if we need to deal with this immediately? I mean, we've got a little contingency money, but I don't think that's going to go very far. Okay. So I think the 1480 remaining in contingency is going to get us an assessment of what we can.
That's my hope, yeah.
Okay.
And then from there, we'll know what we're dealing with.
Okay, that makes sense.
I was just going to say either a contingency or we can talk to Kim as far as the expenditure side of the pavilion, no. But on the revenue side, that is still, above where the expenditures are. That's maybe, something we could talk to Kim about too.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So as a follow-up question then, are you looking for consensus to expend contingency money? I mean, you don't need this to come to the next regular meeting to approve anything, correct?
I think it would be nice, and maybe it'll come back in a different form.
Okay.
But this was mostly just to let you know what's happening, and that I'll be following up to take the next step to make sure that we shore this up.
Sounds good with me.
All right. You know what you're going to do next then, Patrick. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Next up, we have consider and discuss scheduling of a fall/winter council listening session. This is one of my initiatives as council president, that I wanted to do a listening session twice a year. I think I've identified a couple of potential locations, and I would like some feedback on what you guys think about those, as well as some potential dates or timeframes as well. So at the top of my list, I just have two. I have the scout cabin and the library annex. So two historic buildings. One is our cabin, is the scout cabin. One is our newer purchase of the library annex building. I'm open to other options. Just throwing it out there. See what you guys think. Mike.
I'd be in favor of the annex. I'd like to see that.
Me too.
All right, Jason.
Scout cabin, you'll freeze.
I confirm they have heat.
They do have heat, but it takes forever to heat up. You better turn it on like the week before.
Oh, okay.
So,
Do you have to rub two sticks together to get it? Yeah, it's scout cabin, so.
You can earn a badge too. Okay. Any other suggestions other than these two? Annex? Okay, well, that was easy. We could try for the scout cabin in the spring then. It warms up a little bit. And then just as far as potential dates, I just wanted to throw out, first of all, get your sense of, are you thinking, or you guys want to do one in December, or you want to move it to January? I don't want to go past January, though.
I think January, yeah.
Would be, all right. And then, okay, so I guess at this point, I'll just let Patrick send an email out to you guys to figure out what works best. I was hoping for an off Tuesday, just to avoid conflicts with other meetings from other groups that we may be a part of. But I'll let Patrick dig into those details, and we'll come up with something for at the next meeting. Maybe set a date if everyone's comfortable doing this. All right. Thank you very much. Next up, number 16, update on municipal court. They had a meeting, almost. Patrick?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add other than what was put into the packet, just that the meeting was last Tuesday, and there was not a quorum. The group said that they would like to meet again. I suggested they meet in Columbus, so we'll see where that goes. But the main, or the reason they got together was a request to have that undesignated balance looked at, and what the city's contribution to it, and whether it should be distributed. They had talked about that before, so there wasn't any action taken, obviously. So hopefully another meeting will be scheduled and some further discussion will happen.
Okay. Any questions? Surprised they didn't find a quorum with all the people that are a part of that group. All right, moving on. Next up, I have number 17, consider and discuss the use of slow-moving vehicles on city streets. This is, again, hit our desks for a second or third time now. So we should probably take a crack at it here. I looked through the ordinances that were provided by in the packet. I really think there could be some merit to the town of Geneva one, as opposed to the other one that was in there. But I guess first, before we start talking ordinances and everything, we need to talk about, is this something Columbus wants? Is this something the council wants to move forward with? So, I don't know, Mayor Tomes, you brought this forward to us. I don't know if you have any additional comment.
I do. Thanks for having it on the agenda. Just to kind of get the conversation started here, I think it's probably going to be, a broader conversation than the way the agenda describes it, because there is ordinance in here about allowing golf carts on public roads. Those are the sample ordinances that I gave you, and I do like a lot of the things that they've included in the samples that I think would get us started. If that's something the council's interested in. That was the original contact I had received from a resident asking about golf carts, which inspired a conversation with the former police chief and also the city attorney to look at what the current ordinance provided. And golf carts are not permitted on city streets at this time. Looking a little further then, we do have a ordinance on the books that allows for a very specific electronic vehicle, which I don't think we have on the streets anymore, but does not permit lawnmowers, ATVs or UTVs anywhere on any city street. And I believe there's some confusion that gets presented to the public when they see people using those as snow removal tools. People have four-wheelers with a blade on the front, or a riding lawnmower, or a lawn tractor with a snow blower that's kind of going around the neighborhood helping neighbors. That is not permitted either. So I kind of wanted to take all this and have one big conversation out of it to see if the council was amenable to trying to regulate some of those things, because they are happening in the city. And the person that contacted me, I respect the fact that he doesn't want to do it illegally. He wants to do it legally. And there are people that live in this community that own golf carts that drive them currently. It's not permitted by law. So I'm open to whatever the council would like to discuss.
Kasha?
I think we have to separate out the issues. I think the one issue is, can we do golf carts? And I think the other things are another issue. I think specifically with the state of Wisconsin law, I don't know that we're able to drive along a state highway. And unfortunately, to get to any of the golf courses, the only way you can do it is to go along 73 or along 89. You can cross them, but I don't think you can drive along them. So I don't know how anybody's going to get to the crossing without driving along the state highway. So I don't know if an ordinance for golf carts is even possible in our city.
Thank you.
I think when we first started the conversation with Paul, he had pretty much laid it out to say you'd have to have a boundary, essentially, which would permit people inside this boundary to operate a golf cart within the confines of the ordinance, because you can only cross a highway, and you're right, Kasha, you can't drive on a highway. So by no means am I attempting to have an ordinance that would allow every resident in the city of Columbus to drive a golf cart. This would be geared specifically towards people that wish to go golfing in their golf cart with reasonable access to that within the confines of the ordinance, which would be driving on a residential street less than 25 miles an hour and in accordance with all other state laws, licensed drivers, etc. So yeah, if you lived across a highway from a golf course, you're not probably going to be permitted to be able to do that. So this is not going to cover the entire city. This would have to be designated areas of the city that you could permit for, apply and get a permit to operate your golf cart within the city to get to a golf course and back.
Jason?
Yeah, I was just going to agree with Mike that we need something on there, because half of them are doing it anyway. So, I mean, we should codify like what is allowable, what isn't. We should let the citizens at least know that. Plus, for safety, if they're on the roads and stuff, we've already had how many, even slow-moving vehicles, how many hit tractors just this last couple of weeks. So get everybody conformed, get them so they can see.
This might be a silly question, but I guess if we're talking slow-moving vehicles, under the restrictions I'm reading here, I don't see anything that would specifically prohibit snowmobiles. And the whole discussion feels a little bit similar to me to that. And I know we've had difficulty just in the past discussing that at council level. And, you know, I just want to be careful that we're being specific if we need to be specific and not being overly broad, and that there's no confusion about that.
I appreciate that. I would argue that a snowmobile is not a slow-moving vehicle.
I'm sure you could argue it both ways. I just want to, if the issue is golf carts, I agree. Let's talk about specifically the golf carts. I'm not generally in favor of ordinances, adding ordinances that are only going to address one or two random issues that might come up. But if we're seeing that this is a more generalized problem in the city, then I think an ordinance makes sense. Otherwise, I don't know that adding more ordinances that later need to have upkeep and can be confusing is a good idea.
Okay, so we're talking golf carts, but this is slow-moving vehicles as well. So, like Maritone was saying, small,
And not really slow-moving vehicles, low-speed vehicles.
low speed.
Yes, you have to be, you're correct, you have to be careful with your words on these, because golf carts are separately regulated, ATVs and UTVs are separately regulated, low-speed vehicles are separately regulated, slow-moving vehicles are separately regulated, and don't even mention snowmobiles, because they're separately regulated also. So you kind of have to decide what it is that you're trying to regulate first, and then you have to decide how, or and I suppose more importantly, if you can do it at all, because they all have a little bit different rules that apply to them, depending on which category you're talking about.
Paul, do you recall, is the ordinance that we currently have, is that for the neighborhood electric vehicle? Is that what we have permitted?
I think that's correct, and the neighborhood electric vehicle was a hot topic several years ago, and then I don't think I've ever seen one that actually qualifies as that.
It's a very specific
Yes.
vehicle, which, yeah. I guess that's my point, is that we have an ordinance on the book that really doesn't serve any purpose, and I would rather try to address some of the issues that I think we see happening. We do have 2 golf courses in the community, and I think having a realistic area where, yeah, you can do it, but I'm sorry, the guy across the street is not going to be able to do this. We're allowing what I think is reasonable, and I think that there would have to be a registration process, so you have a sticker on your golf cart, here's your address, you're going from the golf course to your residence, and that's it. It's not for pleasure driving around town. That's not what the intent of that is. Just to make people that want to enjoy golf and have a golf cart, give them the ability to do it if they're within a reasonable place to do so. So I think that's probably the best place to start off, is with the golf carts, and I think maybe as we figure from there, maybe we can address some of the other lingering issues, like the UTVs or lawnmowers or whatever they are, but I think we'll have to do them one at a time.
Kasha?
I think I tend to agree with that, and Reagan's point of view is, I think if we're going to address golf carts, we have to do that. I think there's other things that we're trying to lump into the same basket that don't fit, like we can't regulate tractors. They're already regulated. We can't regulate ATVs. They're already regulated. I mean, we can already say they can't drive on our road, but the law already says they can't. So, I mean, there's certain things that I think that aren't really, in my opinion, I don't think are part of the topic we're talking about. And I mean, if we want to address a golf cart ordinance, I think that's what we focus on. And like you said, we address the other things one by one.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, let's address the golf cart. Is there anybody opposed to a golf cart ordinance to allow golf carts on city roads? At least let's start there. Okay. No one's saying.
I like what Mike said, they've got to be parameters on the city roads.
Yeah. All right, so we have a consensus that we can start that conversation. So now, where do we take it from here? I mean, I think that there are some good examples that we can build an ordinance off of. Maritone?
Yeah, I think between these ordinances and a few other that I've read, it kind of covers most of what I would be concerned about, and I think having a permit or some permitting process to allow you to operate the cart is a must. I think the starting point would be actually getting a map in here and having an agreement or an agreement on the council of what would be considered fair and reasonable as far as access, because you do have to consider the borders of the state highways that we have in town. As I said, this is not going to allow blanket coverage for the entire city of Columbus. It would be with what is fair and reasonable, and I think starting with a map and agreeing on those boundaries is probably a good starting point, which wouldn't happen tonight, obviously.
Okay.
I guess I'd like, if we're going to do it, I'd like to start out with a purpose statement. Like, we're contemplating this for the ease and convenience of recreation in town, or is it another purpose? Because, again, kind of going back to prior discussions in similar cases, having the purpose outlined would make sense to me, to say, we're just trying to make it more convenient for folks who live near a golf course and own their own golf cart to get to and from. If that's the purpose, and then again assess how often does it happen and how many people are we impacting if we're going to legislate something, just to make sure it makes sense to spend the time and energy to do it.
Makes sense. Okay, so I think we got a good starting point. We want to discuss this any further tonight, or we want to work with staff to, start thinking about the map, and maybe Paul can start thinking about some ordinances that maybe he's dealt with or seen, and get us to a starting point. Anybody have any issues with that?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So if we draft the ordinance and we have the same type of requirements that we would have, obviously operating while intoxicated, et cetera, those are tickets that could be generated for the municipal court, I take it?
I do not know if OWI applies to a golf cart. I think it does.
Yeah, and would we have input into that? Could we make it so?
I think it does. We would incorporate it into the ordinance if it does.
Okay.
The question is whether or not it's a vehicle. It's obviously motorized, but I don't know if it meets that definition of vehicle, but I can check that. I think it does, but I'll.
Yeah, I would think if it's on a roadway, you'd have to be able to enforce that.
The one example in here that was provided to us does state that operators shall be subject to Wisconsin statutes, Chapter 346, Rules of the Road. Forfeitures for violations will be determined by those in effect for automobiles. In particular, the operator must be sober, open, alcohol is not allowed in the cart, and all riders must be seated. I mean, that's the ordinance, but I don't know how that works. If you get a ticket,
It's a moving vehicle, it's going to be the same.
Same?
Open container, all that
Gotcha.
stuff applies. Yep.
all right. Well, we'll let Attorney Johnson
So I
dig
will-
into that.
I will start working on a Frankenstein version for you, pulling in anything I can find and kind of putting it all in place and try to work on the purpose statement and get something back to you to look at.
Appreciate it.
These samples?
I do.
Okay.
Well, I have the two in this and I have a couple from before,
Okay.
if I remember right.
I think that samples that we have, like the one from town of Nemacoggin, I mean, they're actually outlining that as well by excluding certain county highways. I think we need to take the same approach here when we start looking at a map and defining boundaries or areas to keep people from driving on highways, obviously.
Clark, you have something else?
If you could also incorporate some language about hours of operation, not before sunrise, not after sunset, so we can get away from the directionals and the lights needed to operate on the road.
Yeah, thank you for that. I noticed that. That was in one of the ordinances that I read. It was a good idea.
And if the intent is to travel to and from a golf course, then, if the golf course is not open and it's January, it's not permitted. I think it's trying to get the ordinance to
or?
Support that. Well, okay, if the golf course is open, then you can.
Well, the golf course is open all year round for food.
Oh, I didn't.
and drinks.
Well, for golfing though?
Not for golfing. Yeah, I see what you're saying there.
You can drive your golf cart to the golf course in winter and not worry about the OWI on the way home.
Well, that's something we want to avoid.
Yes,
Obviously.
Yes, you would.
All right. Well, that's why we have you, Paul.
See what I can do.
All right. Any further discussion on slow moving? Well, sorry, on golf carts or slow moving vehicles in general? Nothing? Okay, good. Next up, number 18, convene to close session per state statute 19.85 sub 1 sub G to confer with legal counsel for the governing body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is likely to become involved. I would need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to go into closed session. Pat, if you could please take the roll call.
Millar.
Aye.
Reed. Tylen. Tome. Clark. Hendrickson.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Aye.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. All right, we are now in